We live in a world that is just messy. It's infinitely complex. And yet the main tool we use to make sense of it all is logic, a system that's all about clean rules and perfect order. So how on earth does this super tidy world of logic even begin to understand the beautiful chaos of reality? That's the huge puzzle we're going to try and unpack today.
So let's think about this for a second. When your mind uses logic to think about a tree, what is it really looking at? Is it that specific, one-of-a-kind tree outside your window with its millions of unique leaves and weirdly shaped branches? Or is it analyzing something much simpler, something cleaner, the idea of a tree? This very question is the key to the whole thing.
You see, for logic to work at all, it has to pull off this amazing kind of magic trick. It turns out it can't really deal with the real world directly. No way. Instead, it has to build its own version of reality. A simplified, manageable little world that its rules can actually work inside of.
Okay, so first, let's get our terms straight. Philosophers have a fancy name for the real world, the world of atoms, stars, and actual physical trees. They call it the ontological universum. This is just objective reality in all its overwhelming, unfiltered glory. It's basically everything that exists, whether we're thinking about it or not.
And right away, we hit a massive problem. Pure logic would be totally paralyzed by the ontological universum. I mean, if you had to account for every single atom on every single leaf just to say, hey, that's a leaf, you'd be stuck forever. The amount of information is just, it's too much.
So logic comes up with this absolutely brilliant solution. If you can't work in the real universe, you create a new one, a virtual one, built from the ground up, specifically for thinking. This is where we get this idea of a second, parallel universe made entirely of ideas.
And this, right here, is the star of our show today, the Gnosiological Universum. Think of it as logic's personal playground. It's a subjective reality made not of atoms, but of our concepts and our thoughts. It's the world of tree, the perfect idea, not the actual messy tree in your backyard. And when you put them side by side like this, the difference is just crystal clear, isn't it? On one side, you've got the ontological, real, super complex, and objective. On the other side, the gnoseological, conceptual, simple, and subjective. Here's the kicker. We live in the first one, but we think in the second one. So, the really big question is, how do we get from that chaotic real world to this clean virtual one? Well, it turns out the secret is all about a very specific kind of filtering. It's really the art of knowing what to ignore. Here's basically how it works, step by step. First, you look at the real world. Then, and this is the most important part, you deliberately ignore all the tiny, unique differences between, say, one cat and another cat. Once they seem basically the same in your mind, you can group them all under the clean concept of cat. You do that with everything. String all those concepts together and boom, you've just built yourself a gnoseological universum. Now, if you want the official, fancy term for this, it's called the abstraction of indistinguishability. It sounds complicated, but it's just what we said. You're abstracting away the details until different things become, for your purposes, indistinguishable. It makes them super easy to sort and analyze with logic. And this leads to a pretty stunning conclusion, a real bombshell, actually. It means that pure logic isn't really a theory about the real world at all. It's what's called a non-ontological theory. Its main goal isn't to be objectively true about reality, but to be perfectly consistent within its own model, inside that neat little gnoseological universum it created for itself. Now, this whole idea has some weird implications for concepts we usually think are rock solid. Let's just take the most basic law of logic, identity. A thing is what it is. A equals A. Seems simple, right? Well, not so fast. Because inside this logical world, this model we've built, the very idea of identity gets a little wobbly. It's not some absolute fixed law of the universe anymore. It's more like a tool that you can adjust, depending on what you're trying to figure out.
Identity becomes a flexible concept. So what does it actually mean for two things to be equal? Well, it totally depends on the rules of the game you're playing at that moment. In one context, two cars might be equal if they're the same model. But in another context, they're only equal if they have the exact same VIN. The very definition of equals changes with the situation.
Okay, so logic builds this virtual world where even identity is flexible. You might be asking, why on earth go to all this trouble? What's the end game here? Why separate ourselves from reality like this? Well, the payoff, in one word, is precision.
There's this phrase from the source material that I just love. The whole purpose of this entire system is to conquer the entropy of experience. How cool is that? It's literally a battle against the randomness and chaos of the real world, an attempt to tame all that data into something we can actually work with.
And this is exactly why it matters so much. This process lets us translate messy, real-world facts into a clean, theoretical language. It helps us create focused ideas from a sea of chaotic data. And at the end of the day, it's what allows us to get precise, workable knowledge that we can use to, build things and make smart decisions.
Here is a perfect everyday example. When an engineer or a scientist writes down a measurement like this, they're not describing some absolute, ontological truth about the world. They're creating a gnoseological concept. This interval number is a super precise model that cleverly captures a real-world measurement while also acknowledging its messiness, that little bit of uncertainty, all while giving us clean, theoretical, and incredibly useful information.
Which, of course, brings us to the one big, lingering question. We've seen that our logic builds its own artificial universe so it can be precise and get things done. But if that's where all our thinking happens, how can we ever be totally sure that the neat and tidy conclusions we reach in that virtual world actually hold up out here, in the real one? And that's something to chew on. Thanks for diving into this with me.